We're very excited that Stacey Cochran and Annie Walker are with us today. They're both influential and authentic leaders from Walmart. They are going to be enabling great conversation today through really a unique perspective based on the way they've been empowered throughout their careers and also how they're empowering others. We have two women here today who absolutely encapsulate a quote from Maya Angelou, who said, "Each time a woman stands up for herself, without knowing it possibly, without claiming it, she's standing up for all women." We're also going to talk about how women can lead together. Stacey and Annie are going to talk about building trust in relationships, how you can elevate relationships through mutual support, advocacy, and transparency. And we really know that the power of women working together is real. In the Forbes article, Power of the Pack, the research showed that women who support women are much more successful in business, but also women benefit from more collaborative relationships versus competitive ones. No matter where you are in your career or what level you're at your company, being empowered represents an opportunity to be a leader at any level. So I hope you're going to be able to walk away with a few key takeaways where you can have courageous conversations with your teams on what empowerment looks like within your organizations. We will leave time at the end for Q&A, so please feel free to submit your questions in the chat in the Q&A box. And with that, I'm very happy to turn it over to our moderator and my friend, Wendy Liebman of WSL, who's going to get us started. Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you, Lauren. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. There isn't really a topic that I would prefer to talk about more than this one, maybe baseball, but aside from that, the whole focus here around empowering women and women empowering other women and our communities and our workspaces is so critical and important to us all in this world we live in. You know, I really think that, as Lauren already said, that Annie and Stacey are really a case study for us all to learn from today. You hardly need a facilitator in me, but I'll just make sure I throw in some interesting questions along the way. But it is my pleasure to welcome them both formally, and many of you will know them, but let me just give you all the gory details and background. Annie first. Annie Walker. I'm going to read this illustrious career, Annie, why not? She is currently the Senior Vice President of Apparel Merchandise Operations for Walmart US. This is her 20th year at Walmart, I think. I think she started, oh my heavens, yes, exactly. I looked at, you started in 2002, where she began on the industrial engineering side in stores with the stores engineering team. And then she moved over to the merchandising execution side and ultimately to merchandising, where I first met her, and many of you in the audience today listening in will know Annie from her years where she was VP DMM on the OTC side of the business, and then left us all and went over to even bigger jobs. So, you know, we expect to see her soon on many other sides. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in Industrial and Systems Engineering from Georgia Tech, where she remains on the Georgia Tech Advisory Board for the President, which is speaking of empowerment and giving it back. And she also currently serves as the chair for Walmart's Women's Officer Caucus, which is a very powerful organization supporting talent within the organization. And even more important to all of us, she is a founding board member of WE. So we'll talk about that in a bit. And Stacey Cochran. Stacey, welcome. She is the Senior Director 2. I never figure out what that means, but Senior Director 2, which means she's better than 1, I guess, or 3 or something. She'll tell us later, of Health and Wellness, New Business Development at Walmart. She joined 12 years ago, 2010, I think, in Health and Wellness Multi-Channel Innovation, and moved into merchandising in 2012, where somewhere along that line, she'll tell us how she bumped into Annie. She has held numerous buying positions, most recently Director of Digestive Health before she took over as Senior Director 2. She has, incredibly impressive, she has two master's degrees, one in enterprise consulting and another in operations management, and dare I say painfully from the University of Alabama. Sorry, I couldn't resist. That was cruel of me. I wish I was going to say Roll Tide today, but same time next year. Anyway, enough of all that. Sorry, Stacey, that was cruel. But so you all know, we were all texting each other last night, supporting her, just so you know, speaking of empowering everything, including football. What were you doing, Annie? Oh, you weren't? Oh, of course, you're from Georgia. Oh, my heavens, I forgot.
Supporting.
How foolish am I? Georgia Tech. Duh, don't mind me. Duh. Pay attention, Wendy. Anyway, that said, so, you know, beyond all that, really, the two of you are this living, breathing case study of how empowered women empower women. And so for everyone over the next 30 minutes or so, that's what we're going to talk about, how they got started, how they do that, what they've learned, what works and what doesn't work, just as important. So let's begin at the beginning. You know, tell me how you met and how this journey began, formally, informally. Annie, you want to take the lead on that one?
Sure. So first, thank you, Wendy, for quite a nice introduction. I'm honored to be on this with you. You are a gem of the retail industry and always so insightful. So it's great to be here. And second, I went through some of the attendees that are on here, and there's so many amazing people that I remember from my health and wellness days. So it's great to see you all. But Stacey and I, our, call it, you know, journey of leadership together really started with a mentorship. And so I don't even remember how we connected, Stacey, and maybe you remember, but she does. I do remember taking Stacey on as a mentee, and it probably maybe was a short amount of time, maybe a year. And then within about a year timeframe, I was approached to take the DMM OTC role. And I knew immediately when they started talking to me about it, I was going, oh, wow, my mentee is going to be on my team. This is interesting, and dynamics could change, and the roles and how we interact could change. But I would say that I think I had a few learnings from that I'd just kind of share. And the first one is be the mentor that you would be proud of as the leader. And I think back to that time, and I remember in the pit of my stomach going, okay, well, how is this going to transition? And is it going to be natural? And is it going to be okay? And, if you mentor people the way that you lead people as well, it crossovers incredibly natural. And it was super easy. And it was also, I think, a super easy transition for the team too, because I knew I had to be very careful with partiality or anything like that, because it wasn't, by design that I had her as a mentee and then all of a sudden took on the team. But I had to make sure that I invested just as much in everybody else within the team. But I also had to really kind of balance the lines as a leader of still continuing to fully invest in her, make sure that she continued to have mentors as she continued, but then also to bring the team along as well. So that was something. And then I think the second thing that I'd share is Stacey was a great mentee to take on. And the reasons being is I always share with people to think about, really kind of two things as they decide, should I do this mentor-mentee relationship? And one is, what are you going to get from it? And what are you going to give from it? And Stacey was incredibly bright, so good at strategy, passionate and driven. And she also had knowledge in the health and wellness industry that at the time I lacked a ton of knowledge. And I think that our mentorship really helped me even have a quicker transition because I had spent time with Stacey to learn a bit about that space. And so that's essentially how Stacey and my relationship had evolved. So I don't know if Stacey, you've got something to add.
I'll give a quick 30-second snippet of how we met. I can't believe you forgot.
Oh my gosh.
He and I were volunteering together in the community, and it was an early morning, and I walked into a room and she said, hi, I'm Annie. I was like, I'm Stacey. And we were doing, serving together. And she said, well, what do you do? And I said, oh, I work for Walmart. And she was like, you kind of said that, funny. Like, what do you mean? She's like, I said, it's been kind of tough. I don't know if this is where, I really should be. I was like a year and a half, 2 years into my job. I probably shared way too much. I had no idea who Annie was. At the end of that serving session, she said, hey, look me up in Outlook. I work at Walmart too. I'd love to mentor you. And I went home and looked her up and thought, oh, wow, too honest, but that's how it began. I would
So-
love to go ahead. Wendy.
No, I was going to say, so that beginning, and then you began the mentoring process, which you sort of, it sounds like it was sort of informal, right? It wasn't part of a Walmart or a corporate anything. It came through an external exchange, right?
Yeah. And I would say that it wasn't always a, easy road through the mentorship, Stacy. You can probably remember, I think we both taught each other lessons throughout that time frame. I don't know, maybe I'll leave it for you to share any of that.
As the time goes on, I have lots of stories about Annie if we can get to them.
Oh, good. Well,
Okay,
of
I will
course
say, kind of as we were preparing and thinking about, what we should talk about today, one of the questions was around kind of how has our relationship evolved since we've met from a mentee to a direct report, and now what does it look like today? And I'd love to share a couple of thoughts on, for me, when I think about as I've grown in my career, kind of the empowered relationships, a lot of them are founded on respect. And I think for Annie, I have always, number one, respected Annie's approach at business, her aptitude, she's wildly smart, and her leadership style. And I think her consistency is something that has allowed our relationship to evolve. I always kind of know what to expect from Annie, and I don't get these high lows like, does she still want to talk to me now that she's not my boss? Or can I still ask her questions that are really tough as I'm on this career journey? I have actually a quick story from the last 3 weeks. I had probably one of the toughest dynamics I've experienced in my career. And within 15 minutes of getting out of a situation, I texted her and said, hey, do you have a couple minutes? I want to run something by you. I don't even really know how to process this. And she said, yeah, where are you? And I said, I was in the home office that day, and she made herself available. We were in person, interestingly, and we met quickly. And I think that these empowered relationships with women, it's so meaningful. That was a critical time for me, and to have a sounding board, it meant a lot to me, and it helped me through this. So.
Can I ask the question then, how long has this relationship, because that's clearly what it is, how long has this gone on? When did it begin?
Maybe 2013, 2014, so 8 years-ish, if I had to guess.
Yep.
And what you've identified, Stacy, some of the essentials about it, consistency, trust. What are the things that you've both learned in this about each other? That division of, I guess, church and state, Annie, you said, when you work with each other versus not working directly with each other. What are some of the things in that period of time that you've learned both about each other and about empowering each other?
Yeah, I think the importance of thinking about trust and professionalism as you build the relationship over time. And so it's really easy when you mentor someone to become friends with them. And you have to be so careful, because if Stacy and I in our mentorship crossed into the friend range, it would have made it very difficult from a leadership standpoint in business to then go and lead the team. And you have to make sure, and it's a balance that you have to maintain as a leader, is how do I build authentic relationships with people? How do I build trust over time? And know, how do I cross that as I proceed, so that there is, trust that's built, but not past the point of professionalism, and knowing that. And I had a lesson early on in my career. I remember a high-level female leader taking me on as a mentee when I was entry level within the organization. And I remember getting so excited to go visit with her all the time when I had the mentor relationship, and I would go into the office and I would sit there and I'd be like, I'd have all these questions and I'd go in with topics. So I was well prepared. But there were a few times when I'd walk out and I'd think, man, like I just want her to drop her guard, and I want her to tell me everything. And I want her to be even more authentic than what she is. And what I had to learn is I wasn't actually ready for that. Mentally, I wasn't in the career place in my journey to truly, get as exposed to all the things that she necessarily has been exposed to through the breadth of her career. But I also was able to build a trusting relationship over time that built up, and over time, trust was built, and over time, authenticity was built. The role of the mentor is truly to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And sometimes that balance between what you want to hear and what you need to hear can be hard, and you have to learn that as you progress within your career and know, when am I really ready to get exposed to some of the things or some of the hard conversations or things that you just don't know when you're early on within your career, and having I guess the resilience to keep going and continue learning in that path, and knowing that trust is built over time.
And Stacey, how do you see that from your perspective? Because now you are, again, a number of years into that, into your relationship with Annie, but also into your relationship with others that I assume you're also empowering, because I know the two of you just keep giving back. So what have you learned from this relationship, and about what to do and what not to do?
Yeah, I've learned tons. I think Annie is like I mentioned before, the consistency in her leadership style first has taught me that consistency matters a lot to all of those around me, specifically in my closest sphere. I think that Annie's kind of almost like Six Sigma attitude of always getting better, always improving, has helped me kind of understand, as a leader, people may not ask for it, but they see it, they can sense the way that I lead myself, and it rubs off on them. And I'd love to talk about that more in a bit. I think that there's so many studies around kind of maintaining appropriate mentor-mentee relationships in a professional dynamic. I would encourage everybody. I love the Harvard Business Review. I have a subscription. I read all of them. I think there's probably 5 or 6 that I've read recently about kind of maintaining that, because to Amy's point, there are some people that I work with that I just like so much, and I want to be friends with them, but I know as a leader, there is a fine line, and it's appropriate for me to be intentional in the way that I approach them. And then I hope when they don't work for me anymore, we have a relationship like Annie and I.
So you're talking about mentoring, you're talking about empowerment, and you're talking about leadership. How do I have to think about those 3 things as an integrated way of building ourselves and women in business? So can you define those for me?
Yeah, I'm going to share like one of the mistakes that I made, which hopefully everybody will have my back in this conversation, because sometimes it's hard to share what you didn't do well. But I remember back when I had become a leader of people, which, typically within the Walmart world and many organizations, it's the path from senior manager to director. And I remember one of my, one of the best feedback that I ever got was a leader coming to me and saying, "Annie, you're not a people leader." And I remember sitting there going, whoa, wow, that's painful. That hurts deep, because I love people and I'm passionate about people. And what ended up coming across, and I had to go on a journey to figure out, what does that mean? And what behaviors do I have that I should actually reassess? And it's very natural early in your career to be super passionate about results and super passionate about leadership, and leadership in a way of driving to get those results and driving according to a timeline and leading quick staff meetings and getting everyone out and doing all the, call it, leadership things. But there's a crossover to empowerment, and there's a crossover to caring and showing authenticity and caring about people that mattered. And it wasn't that I didn't care, it's that those behaviors didn't come across just as balanced with the leadership behaviors. And I had to learn how to balance those two and know that it matters just as much what you do as how you do it, and how you approach people, how you show you care about the people that are a part of your team, how you lead your organization, where you start from. And results always come if you truly build great teams and build up the leaders within your team. And so crossing into empowerment really is more about truly authentically caring about those people, building up their confidence, building up their trust, building up the respect through what you make important and what behaviors you show consistently. And so for me, I am so grateful for the leader who told me that earlier on in my career. And by golly, I mean, I never believe that anyone arrives in leadership. You can be CEO of the world, and you are not, like, you have not arrived, because there's so much that you can learn on your leadership journey throughout your life. And I'm grateful for that person who told me, Annie, you need to start thinking about that. And they told me it in a way that I had to go on a journey to figure it out, but I'm so grateful for it. And so, in your question about leadership and empowerment unlocks incredible results. Leadership can drive results, but empowerment can take those results to a whole new level.
Yeah. Yep. Go ahead.
No, Stacey. So, how did you see that, or how have you experienced that kind of journey, that learning along the way?
Yeah. I'm only halfway into my journey compared to Annie. I'm a little over 10 years in. And so I would say it took me a little bit longer to figure this out. A couple years into working for Annie, I would say we had a really high functioning team. We were hitting our budgets. We had a lot of fun as a team under Annie, but then I personally led my kind of buying cross-functional team. And a big lesson in empowerment came from one of my peers on the team. I remember walking into the office one day and walking by a pod, and everyone was high-fiving, and they were like, they had a team name, and they were like, go team, whatever. And I walked in, like, this is exciting. What's going on? They're like, we just hit our budget for the year like 6 weeks early. And I'm like, oh man, I hope we hit it 6 hours before the year's 6 weeks early. And they were talking about how their leader was the buying leader, like the buying director promised them a steak dinner if they made budget a month before, right? And they were all just rallied around it. And kind of to make a long story short, thinking about my team, I was a decent leader. People listened to me, they respected me. I think I lacked the fun, the empowerment, some people on my team recently talked to me about the Sunday scaries, how people sometimes get nervous coming to work on Monday, it's kind of drudgery. And I don't want people to feel that way. I want them to be excited about coming to work and working with me. I heard a stat that I think like 65% of your life you spend at work, or something crazy. And so I thought, yeah, I want people to spend where they're spending majority of their time. I want there to be a culture of empowerment and fun. And Adam Grant, I follow him online, and he said, like, so elementary the other day, be someone that someone actually wants to work with. And that's so basic. But when I think about empowerment, I think about there's a difference between a leader you have to work for and a leader you're excited to work for. There's also a McKinsey article that I read last night about empowerment, and it says the key to being leading effectively through empowerment is to be an inspiring coach. And I think those are pretty interesting words. Number one, it's a skill to be inspiring as a leader. It's also a skill to be a coach and not a manager, right? To coach people along in their journey and create an atmosphere of empowerment in the way that they're being led and how they will hopefully lead one day.
So it sounds like, from your perspective, Stacey, you're learning from lots of sources. I mean, you've got Annie as a mirror, I'm going to say, in terms of her journey, but you are avid about learning in terms of leadership and empowerment and doing the work you do. Is that something? How did you learn to empower yourself in all of that? Where did that come from?
Yeah. I think some of it is just innate. I just love being a learner. I have seen that from different leaders, including Annie, where it's exciting to be stimulated by new things, right? To be a lifelong learner. I remember getting my MBA, there was a class on leadership, and there was a session on nature versus nurture. And that always kind of piqued my interest. Some people just naturally get leadership. They thrive at a young age. And some people you have to nurture it a bit more. I probably have had to nurture it a little bit more. And so I want to be the best that I can be for those that I'm around, my family, my professional life. And I think, always kind of optimizing the way that I function and the way that I manage myself is important to me. as an individual.
And Annie, I mean, yes, you've had more experience than Stacey in this, but you have a unique voice. You have what comes across in my view of you, very biased, no doubt, is, you know, you're reaching out beyond the Walmart community to a broader group, not just we. How did you come to be this person that you are, beyond having mentors who said to you, you're not doing this, or you are doing this?
Yeah, I would say it's two things. The first one is the power of feedback. And it was interesting, but a supplier or someone told me, and I'm sure there's many people on here that will probably laugh when I say this, but someone said, Annie, make us your partners, not someone you just sit across the table with. And that made a massive difference for how I thought about engaging with suppliers and engaging with the industry and engaging with retail. And for me, it was a pivotal moment to really start going, ooh, wait, if I thought about working together and thinking about the industry and thinking about the people and thinking about broader, they could be a part of this business. They could be a part of our team. They are our partners. They are our collaborators. And I can learn a ton from them. And when I started engaging with the WE organization, it was amazing, the network that grew so fast and so broad. People with incredible backgrounds. They've done this before. They've been in this industry before. They've done that. You know, and it was incredibly broad, but it opened up a ton of doors of learning and education and a network that really mattered. And then I think that the second thing that I'd say is just, I have also had to come to the realization myself of becoming, you know, there's a book that's written that's called Be Your Own Mentor. And I had to actually truly embrace that and understand that, because as you grow within an organization, obviously, like, you know, you go through a lot of different like leadership classes and all of that stuff. But at some point, what you feed your brain and what you think about consistently and how you're growing depends just as much about what you do with your personal time and how you invest in yourself. And so I had to truly embrace over the last couple of years, how do I be my own mentor? How do I think about the time that I spend or the goals that I set personally? That how does that continue to grow and develop me as an individual, that I'm learning broader than the walls that I, you know, sit within and exist. So.
Well, I think of both of you and your meeting, which actually was external to the office by the sounds of things. And I think about the kinds of mentoring we do and or empowering we do, or the learning we do in terms of leadership, that it's not just dependent on the people we work with, and that there's a community or families that we belong to, and how can we learn from that? And that's what you're saying here, I think. And how do you both think about that in terms of, I don't know, the first time you saw somebody who you looked up to and went, oh my heavens, look at that person, whether you were little or middle or where you are today, that you looked up to as a leader. Can you tell us a bit about that? Stacey, you want to have a go on that one?
Sure. Yeah, some good examples. I thought about it a little bit from a business perspective when you were saying that, Wendy. I have two quick examples. My first example is I was an MBA intern at Walmart, and it was fun. It was a lot, and I was intimidated. And my first boss, I worked in logistics and transportation strategy. And my first boss was also a lady named Stacey. And we worked in a building that was 95% male engineers. And so I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was getting my MBA, so just general business at the time. And I think what I remember about Stacey that just made me look up to her as a woman, as a leader, was that Stacey was petite. She couldn't have been 5 feet tall. She didn't wear makeup. She was very, very plain. She had such deep aptitude in the area where she worked that she kind of commanded the room in a really positive way. Her depth of experience, but also the care about doing a great job, to me as an intern, laid a really firm foundation of, I want to be like that. And, she rose the ranks at Walmart and has done a really successful job in a male dominated area. And I think she was a testament to a lot of people about be great at your job. It doesn't matter necessarily as much always, your presence, what you look like, things like that, but be great and have aptitude in your job. And then my second example is my first full-time boss at Walmart was also a lady. And I think what I looked up to the most, what I looked up most to with her was around her commitment to the business and her ability to, I think it's probably that consistency like Annie. She was energetic. She was a fast talker. She was excited about work every day. And as a new full-time associate, I remember we would go into meetings together. We had so many back-to-back, not Zoom calls, but 1-800 WebEx type calls. And she would say, hey, this is what I'm sharing. Do you feel comfortable? Are you ready to share in these meetings? Here's the agenda. She was so thoughtful day to day about her business. And I thought, man, this is so reassuring to me. I have a leader who cares a lot. It rubbed off on me. And I think it's like the trickle down effect. How she managed herself was a testament to me. It inspired me. And so I think that when I think about looking up to people look up to me today. I forget that sometimes, and being really thoughtful in the way I carry myself is important to me so that they can have a firm foundation as they start their careers.
Mm-hmm. And Annie?
Yeah, so I'm going to give a little bit more of a personal example from my childhood. I grew up dancing, and the lady, her name was Sherry, she owned the dance studio, and she owned and managed her own business. And I always looked up to her, but the memory that I have the most of her was at a point where I was at my lowest. Shocking, but I put a ton of pressure on myself, and I wanted to be perfect. And I wanted, everything to go smooth and never to mess up. And I got to a really low point where my self-confidence was weak at a time in my life where it was just really tough. And she knew it. And she came and she picked me up at my house and took me to, at the time, it was a Thriftway grocery store. I don't even think they exist anymore. But we sat in the back parking lot, and she had a bouquet of flowers. And her whole message to me was, I see you, I believe in you, and she's going to watch out for me and help me. And it made a massive difference to me to know that at my weakest, I had someone that reached out, cared about me, and saw me and told me that she believed in me. And it was a moment that taught me from a woman in leadership of how important your words are. And that applies to men as well. But making sure that you tell people that you believe in them, tell them that you see them, tell them, that you're watching out for them and how you're helping them strategically, or you name it. But that has always stood with me, and it's been a memory that I've always kept. And it's the level of respect that I had for her and looking up to her mattered. So that's probably the first time I can remember just being taken under the wing of a leader and knowing that I had someone that had my back.
And so as you think about the journey you've both been on and clearly are continuing on within this company and in your lives, what are the 2 or 3 things that when you think about the audience, all sort of our extended family who are on this wonderful call now, how are you? Sorry, I'm getting texts from people saying they're really enjoying this. I didn't turn off my beep. Sorry, but thank you, everybody. We're really thrilled that you're enjoying this. It's like, oh, okay, there we go. But how do you think about that now? I mean, we've gone through this 2 years where our ability to touch, feel is, behind a screen, where organizations have changed, where new people, old people, people are ill, many things that I don't really need to go into. How have your leadership styles either changed, evolved, and how do you empower people when we're kind of at arm's length from all of this as well? For both of you, because you're both now clearly, major leaders in this company.
Stacey, you want me to go first? Or you want to go?
Go ahead.
I'll give maybe 3 quick examples. The first one is, how incredibly important empathy is as a leader. And you don't fully know and understand it until you've walked a mile in someone's shoes. And so, asking people questions and understanding who people are personally, like I think back to my time of being a mom of kids under the age of 5 and how hard that is. Like, for the record, your life while you're working and you've got kids under 5 is like a blur until they become 5 and you're like, okay, I can breathe. But it's hard. And like examples of what I would say, just this past week, we were looking at the school calendar, and surprise, Bentonville schools are closed Monday and Tuesday next week. So Martin Luther King Jr. Day closed on Monday, but the school applied a second day. And in my staff, I just took a moment and said, make sure you are empathetic to parents, because if they're like me, they did not realize they were having their kids at home on Tuesday. We all knew Monday, but Tuesday is a huge challenge. And so just remembering to think about life in the eyes of other people and having empathy for, the different environments and the different things that are going on in their lives. So that would be one thing that I've learned. The second thing is just, since I've been in the Women's Officer Caucus chair role, which has been an absolute blast, and one of the greatest joys in my work life is being a part of that. But I've learned so much about how important it is to give back as you grow within roles and grow within, levels of higher responsibility. And it kind of goes with that whole quote of, to whom much is given, much is required. And we did just a simple mentee event where we had every woman officer invite their mentees. And, I didn't limit, we told them send us one, but a few people were like, hey, get 2 or 3 in there. And it was amazing. It's so easy to pull together. We had Doug speak, but the impact that had, I had global mentees, so people outside of the US or people in the field send me notes of, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And I learned so much and I feel motivated. And so just creating an authentic atmosphere, cascading, remembering that when you're in levels, when you've been, gifted and blessed with the ability to step into levels of more responsibility, that it's also your obligation to give back. And that's been really important, especially when you think about women and you think about what's happening with COVID. I mean, the stats say more women are leaving business in general during COVID. And you can look at the simple stats of women rising within leadership levels, and women don't stay in the workforce as they rise as much. And so it is so important for us to continue to support other women and continue to build up other women within our careers, because we all need each other and we all need to be supportive as we continue. And that goes with men and women alike. So I think the last thing that just kind of a small little thing is I've become really passionate about helping people as they grow into people leaders and as they take on teams. And how do you do that right? And I think so many times we estimate the true transition of going from leading self to leading others. And I always sit down people that become new directors on my team for 30 minutes, an hour, and I start just going through, think about things like, making sure that they know I'll always have their back as long as they do the right thing, like making sure that they always choose the right thing. Or, I always share with people, I'll never get mad at the situation, but how you react. And so we're always going to have problems. We're in jobs to solve problems. We're leaders, and so I think that critical step of going into a director role and knowing, how do I lead people right? How do I lead a team in a way that they want to achieve things like Stacy shared? I've just become a lot more passionate about helping people with that step, because it becomes so critical and has that cascading effect and that empowerment effect. So
Stacy, from your point of view, we've coming down to the last 5 minutes or so before we open it up for questions. So your perspective?
I think about 2 or 3 things on how to build, a positive, supportive culture for women, even, during these times of COVID. I think of 2 things. I think of advocacy, and what through my mind is just advocate like crazy for the women around you.
Mhm.
I have had a unique career in that most of all of my leaders, I have gotten to learn, I think only less than 1 year of my entire career did I report directly to a male. So my viewpoint is different. And I have gotten to learn in such a unique, dynamic way on what great advocacy looks like. And why that matters is because it's been so empowering to me. People advocated for me. Now it is so natural for me to advocate for other women, especially those on my team, but cross-functionally as well. There's a like hashtag kind of movement in the women career industry. It's all raise. I don't know if anybody's really heard of it. I hadn't really, but it's all about kind of this shine theory of when other women rise, then we all shine, right? Like we can really advocate for the successes and the value that different women are bringing on the team, like we all rise. And so just, when I think about that culture, just the advocacy, intentional advocacy for others. I also think about feedback loops. I know Annie just touched on those a bit. I would say early on in my career, I wasn't great at taking feedback. Annie told me one time, she said, Stacey, you do know that you're not perfect. I was like, oh gosh. And it just came from an insecurity in myself that I wanted her to always think that I had everything together, that she could depend on me. And that's not real life. That's not authentic. Like being open and honest around to my leader on what I needed to work on and where I had gaps is important. And I wasn't great at that. And now in my career, I have a few women that I ask often, please give me intentional feedback. And when you feel trusted and supported by another woman, that feedback is meaningful. I actually spoke on a Dan Mack panel recently, and a lady that was a supplier to me early on in my career, she sent me a note. I didn't ask her. Typically, I do intentionally ask for feedback. But she sent me a note and she said, Stacey, this was great. Here's some things, but hey, I want to give you some tough feedback. And she gave me 3 or 4 things, and I'm so grateful for it. I think about it even now. I think that talk was 8 months ago. And I think about it and I was so grateful for that. And so typically when I see other women doing things that I care about, I'll say, hey, here's some great things, but think about this for next time to make it a bit more effective. I don't know, feedback is such a gift. I guess that's a cliche saying, but it really is, especially when it's in a culture of kind of positive, trusted, supportive women networks.
So I'm going to ask you one last question before we open it to the floor. So everybody get your questions ready. The relationship you have and have built over this last 10 years or 8 years or whatever, so is extraordinary. And it's clearly enabled you both to grow, empower each other, and then empower, I see the sort of circles and that, it's like the pebble in the stream, right? And empowering others. But there are a lot of people who work in companies, and maybe some who are watching, listening, who actually don't feel very empowered, and they're in difficult situations and they don't find that support in their companies. How should they think about, you talked, Annie, about empowering yourself, but how should they, as a last thought, think about taking care of themselves or looking for leadership or mentors, in other places? What should they do about that rather than sitting there and just not succeeding?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would say, I've learned a lot of lessons, and not everything has gone great throughout my career, and certainly have made a massive amount of mistakes. But the important lessons that I learned really early on in my career, where there were tough, sticky, rough situations that I was in, I had to learn to ensure that I was using my voice for the good and using it timely and not waiting. And so it's very easy within your career to just worry about, okay, what's the effect of this? Or who should I trust? Or are they going to be open to my feedback? And it's all in how you handle it. And I had to learn quickly, one, to not take things personal, and don't blame yourself in situations. Don't be too tough on yourself. If something's not right, address it quick and address it with the right people. I can think of a time in my career where instead of addressing it with the right people, I went and chattered and said, okay, what do you think about this? Well, that actually doesn't help, and it doesn't create an atmosphere that, will continue to progress a team or progress an organization. And so talking with the right people, knowing how to express the challenges, and then being level-headed about it and stepping back and going, okay, am I assessing this right? Am I getting too emotional about it? Have I brought my emotions in more than, my level-headedness? And I think, the last thing that I'll just share is I always tell my daughter, who's 5 years old, 4 things. And I say, be strong, be confident, be humble, and be kind. And so, anytime she's panicking or, talking about drama at school or on the playground, I'm always saying, be strong, be confident, be humble, and be kind. And, I just feel like that works in business, but it also works for a 5-year-old on the playground as well. So, Stacy, I don't know if you have thoughts.
Yeah, when I think about times in my career that were tough and I really needed some guidance or some energy, I think about the fact that typically you learn most when you're kind of in the valley, right? When things are hard, it's what pressure creates diamonds, right? And man, I've learned a lot in the valleys of my career, and I'm grateful for them now. Not so grateful going through them, but a lot of that I think is linked back to mindset. I read a book by Carol Dweck. It's called Mindset. I highly recommend it. And it's about having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And having a growth mindset, I think, is the part of being a lifelong learner about, understanding that everything's not going to be okay, but you can continue to grow and persevere and learn. I think mindset is really big. Having a strong mind is really important as a leader of yourself and of your team, and to lean into kind of mindset work.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, because I do think that part of empowering ourselves is such a critical aspect to empowering others and leading others. So I appreciate that. Very good. Well, I can't thank you enough for this. We could have gone on for a very long time. I'm assuming I can see some questions. So Lauren, I'm going to hand back over to you and let you field the questions.
Great. Well, great job, all 3 of you. Thank you for a very transparent, authentic conversation. I'm not surprised, but I think you guys just took it to another level in terms of really sharing how you feel in these different areas. And to reflect that, we have a lot of questions coming in on the chat function, and I have a few texts as well, but we'll start with the first anonymous question, which is around imposter syndrome. Do either of you struggle with that, and how do you overcome those thoughts?
I want Annie to take that one. That's a consistent question in every mentoring circle we talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I shared, like, early on in my life, I struggled with self-confidence, but I would say in business, I don't know if I necessarily would say I'd struggle with imposter syndrome, but more so having the confidence to speak up and advocate for myself enough is probably where it crosses over, that I think women typically don't speak up enough for themselves, or don't push on the questions or give me clarity to things, especially when it comes to development or having candid feedback, and being willing to go back and say, okay, I know we had a development session, but I'm struggling with either the feedback, or I'm struggling to understand how that applies to me, or I just want to talk through it. And it's all in how you do things, but to me, it's not as much, I don't think I struggle with imposter syndrome, but more of whether I advocate or have those conversations. And I've learned how to do that over time, but I would say early on in my career, I probably didn't do that well. Stacy.
For a quick response, we can get to a bunch of questions. I would say that I've significantly struggled with it. Imposter syndrome is so real. And a lot of it has been mindset work, but just to be authentic, because we didn't prepare these types of questions around this, but for me, I had to stop being, I felt like I was kind of self-centered, like it was all about me, and am I performing, and am I smart enough? And it's like, man, it's not about me. It's about, it's business. It's the company and creating results for the company and the atmosphere, those around me. I had to take focus off myself. And it's like I relieved a lot of pressure. if someone promotes you, they believe in you. Typically, they're going to advocate for you. They're going to trust you, or you want to get to that point. And so for me, I had to kind of self-reflect. Like, it's not all about you, Stacey, and take the pressure off myself.
Great. Stacey, a question directly for you. As Gen Z is coming up in the organization at Walmart, what advice do you have to reach out to this group and really bring them into our fun network of CPG that we have? What are you learning about them, and what can you tell this webinar today?
I am learning so much. I have a really diverse team, most all Gen Z, and most all do not live near me. So I've had to learn how to manage a Gen Z virtually, which has been fun. But I would say it's a skill. This is one thing, the biggest thing for me is that having a humble nature of listening and learning to my team isn't always innate. And I have learned more from some of the younger individuals on my team around culture, how to lead, what matters to them. It's actually wildly different than what kind of mattered to me at that age. And I think that oftentimes it's easy to say, you know, I've made it this far, I've done these things, this is the way to success, but it's not. What got you here won't get you there. And leading Gen Z people is really important for the future. I mean, it is the next generation of talent. And so we communicate differently. There's a lot more, I would say, authentic, almost like emotional type conversations around what inspires them. It's more open, less rigid, and really challenging myself to shift to their needs, I think empowers them and it creates results.
Great. Thank you, Stacey. And outside of the chat that came through is around trust and how that played a key role in relationship development among women. And have you experienced any challenges in that arena, and how do you overcome that?
Annie, I'd love to give an example about.
Go for it.
Right. I'm going to be really concise. Okay. Guys, this is like one of my defining moments as with Annie as my boss. I will never forget this. I wonder if she forgets it. I don't know, but I sure don't. As a buyer, most of you know on the call, you have what's called a walkthrough. You work like 6 months negotiating items, using customer insights to design the shelf, do all this stuff. You're so excited about your walkthrough. It's so much work. And when the day comes, you cannot wait to show it off. Okay. Really short story. We go, I have a big walkthrough. Annie had been my boss, I don't know, a year or two. I could not wait to show her this work and all the leadership and cross-functional people. I was so proud. I worked in a category that didn't have a lot of innovation. So we did all kinds of stuff, packaging and flow and blah, blah. Get the walkthrough. A couple of people who had been recently promoted were trying to make a name for themselves. And I didn't realize that. Going through the walkthrough and they're like getting up, changing my stuff around, derailing my thing. And I'm visibly getting mad. Like my cheeks are turning red. And I could see Annie out of the corner of my eye, like watching me. And, you know, I was young in my career and I messed up and I was just angry. And I was like, I hear your feedback. Like, you're derailing this walkthrough. Can we talk about it later? I was just, fail right in front of everybody. So go home that night and I'm like writing all this stuff down. Annie should have done this. Why didn't she do this? Or why did this happen? Next morning, Annie comes to my desk. Hey, do you have a few minutes to talk about yesterday? I'm like, I sure do. I was ready to tell her all the things she should have done differently. I mean, I had like 15 bullets of like feedback I wanted to give to Annie. And end of the story is we walked in her office and she said, how do you think yesterday went? And I'm like, oh, well, let me tell you. And I go, and she's like, wait, Stacey, the one thing that you continue to forget is that I trust you. And I thought, wow, all of my angst went away. She was like, people are always going to have feedback. People want to make a name for themselves. You've got to learn as a leader how to kind of navigate that. I trust you. Do you not know that? Like, have I not experienced, like, I've not shown you that? And she had. And man, being trusted is so empowering. It shaped the rest of my career. When I feel trusted, the results are endless. I'm so engaged. I'm so excited, and I feel trusted. If I don't feel trusted by a leader, I flail. I'm searching for kind of imposter syndrome. Like, do they like me? Am I doing good enough? Right? So as a leader, trust your people and tell them over and over that you trust them.
That was great, Stacey. Thank you for answering that question, but also thank you for giving us a final sneak peek of what actually goes on in those walkthroughs. Sure, all of us wanted to know. Great. Well, I think last question before we wrap up, maybe we'll give this to Annie. Annie, how have you seen the WE organization and community evolve? You were a founding member with so many great women, and how have you seen the evolution, and where do you think WE is going to go next?
Yeah, so super grateful for WE, and for so many reasons. And I think I shared some of that before, but like the relationships that have been built across the industry, the development that's happening, the cascading of the next generation WE. So the work that Kim Sines did with, hey, how do we engage the next generation and build up leaders? And a lot of the next generations getting promoted from the time that we engage them, and they're now joining the WE board. So it's had a cascading effect of helping, call it, the continued generations of people that are engaged within the industry. It's, create an environment of candid feedback and growth. I have so many great relationships with the women across, and I know that hopefully they know that they could call me at any time and I'd take the time out of the day to talk to them. But but that I'd also, be there to help the expanded network, the cascading impact, and most importantly, the forever friends that you build out of it. But I would say that it's made me a broader, more well-rounded leader, and someone who went from just thinking within the bubble of the company that I work in and thinking broader, and engaging an industry as a part of my full network, as a part of a catalyst for my network, a catalyst for business, and helping not only the business that I support here at Walmart, but then, even beyond. And so it's just been a great organization. And I love seeing, we address some of the topics that not everybody's willing to address, like diversity and inclusion, that, let's have the hard conversations. Let's talk about it. Let's, openly talk about how to develop women within the industry, or, coming out of the George Floyd murder. Let's have the direct conversations. Let's ask the tough questions, because this is a safe environment to help us all progress together. And so it's just been great to see the community develop and evolve, and looking forward to it as it moves forward.
As a quick add-in, Lauren, before we last 2 seconds, Lauren actually did an incredible job doing a overview of parental leave policies around companies in our industry. And she was able to bring that to the board. Several people got to hear this diligence that she put together and then bring it back to our companies. I was able to share that with a senior leader in HR and go back and forth about different kind of understanding statistics, what other companies that are close to Walmart, it's making a difference. So the work that we is doing, the work, Lauren, that you did with leave was phenomenal. And I thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, thank you both so much. We're going to wrap up. I know there was a few questions on some of the great tips that Stacy and Annie shared. So one of the books was Be Your Own Mentor. The other one was Mindset. Annie talked about what she shares in her family around be strong, be confident, be humble, be kind. And I hope you all have notes that you were able to take on as well. So thank you everyone for joining this first Conversations with WE of the year. And special thanks again to Annie, Stacy, and Wendy. And I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.